So, Afnah, Gavoah, Haute, Couture, high fashion. All three mean the same thing. I thought I'd throw you this week and talk about Haute Couture. We've already examined the building and the foundations and done a makeover of the master suite. Now we're heading for the wardrobe.
But have we done it spiritually in our life?
Only you can answer that. I couldn't possibly comment. So Haute Couture, it's French for high sewing or high fashion, just as Afnah Gavoah means the same thing. And it refers to the creation of exclusive custom-fitted clothing. Haute Couture is high-end fashion. And what makes it high-end is it's constructed by hand from start to finish. And it's made from high-quality, expensive and often unusual fabrics and sewn with extreme attention to detail and finished only by the most experienced and capable of sewers. Does that sound like the making of the priestly garments to you? Describes it exactly. And it's often done using time-consuming, hand-executed techniques, just like the priestly garments made for Aharon and his sons. So when you picture yourself putting on the special garments described in Ephesians every morning, the armour, do you see yourself looking like this? Most people, if you talk about putting on the armour every day in Ephesians 6, that's how they picture themselves. Why? Because the Greek-influenced Roman church has taught this down through the centuries, that putting on the armour every day, putting on the garments, will make you look like that, the Roman centurion. Or do you picture yourself looking like that? When you get dressed every morning, how do you look? How do you see yourself in the mirror? Like that? Or like that? Which is the actual Torah meaning of the description. It's not physical armour, which just like David put on this clunky metal stuff, put on a sword, put on the helmet and couldn't walk, couldn't move, because it's too clumsy. Yes, I once heard an American general describe the American army, as a blunt instrument, and what was needed in this particular situation was a scalpel. And often the IDF is a scalpel, not a blunt instrument. So we'll come back to all of that, otherwise you'll get distracted. We can't have that. So let's examine in detail the detailed instructions that have been given to us in Ephesians. First of all, it says, grow powerful in union with the Lord and in union with His mighty strength. Where do we get this mighty strength from? What does it say in Torah? The joy of the Lord is? So the way to grow powerful is to experience His joy and live in His joy on a daily basis. It's the joy of the Lord that is His strength. It's relationship. Notice it says grow powerful in union with the Lord. You grow powerful by being in relationship with Him, being in union with Him. It says for husbands and wives to leave their fathers and mothers and come together as one flesh. But what He says to us is, I want you to come together with me as one spirit. We need to get to the stage where He starts and we finish, and where we finish and He starts is impossible to detect. Exactly. When you think you've arrived, you realise you're just at the first platform. Whenever you think you've finally learned it all, you've got a problem. It says use all of the armour, and it's not armour in the sense that we saw there. and all of the weaponry that Yahweh provides. So that you'll be able to stand against the deceptive tactics of the adversary. Why are they deceptive? Because that's the only tactic he knows. There's not a glimpse of truth in him. For we're not struggling against human beings. I see so many people and I think you're spending all your life, all your time struggling against human beings, and that's not where it's at. But against the rulers, the authorities, and the cosmic powers governing this darkness. So when he's talking about this darkness, he's not talking about us, he's talking about the world. Because we don't live in darkness. We live in the light. So they only have rule and authority over the darkness, not the light. It's against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm. So take up every piece of war equipment that Yahweh provides, so that when the evil day comes, any evil day, it's not talking about a specific day, any evil day, you will be able to resist or overcome. When they say resist, people think, oh, just resist. No, it says you'll be able to overcome. And when the battle is won, you'll still be standing and people think, oh, survived. It's not what it means. It means you will be victorious. Therefore, take a stand and have the Chagorah Shel Emet, or the belt of truth, buckled around your waist. Put on righteousness for a Hoshen, or breastplate, and wear Na'aleh, or shoes on your feet, which is the readiness or the equipping that comes from the good news of Shalom, or Torah. Always carry the Magan Shel Batar, the shield of trust, with which you'll be able to extinguish all of the Bo'er Chetz, the flaming arrows of the evil one, the accusations, the temptations, the what-ifs. Take the Kazdah, or the helmet, or turban, of deliverance, or redemption, along with the Ha'agar, the sword, or the Torah, given by the Ruach, the Spirit. That is, the word of Yahweh. And as you pray at all times with all kinds of mitpalel, or prayers, and bakashan, requests, in the Spirit, vigilantly and persistently for all of Yahweh's people. So Yahweh is the head designer. He's the designer and the provider of the halbashah, or clothing, that is to be worn by his kohen, or priests. Aharon was the first to wear the garments of Kohen Hagadol, the high priest, and pass them down. He also carried the names of Israel's sons in birth order, 6 engraved on each shoulder, which speaks of the burden of responsibility. A breastplate for judging righteousness in Ephesians 6. And then he put 2 special objects, the Urim and the Thummim, in the breastplate, and I'm not going to get into it. Only Yahweh knows that, what they are, what they were. He put them over his heart to guide his decisions regarding justice. And he would never have made a decision unless he first heard from Yahweh. So I don't care what the objects were, but I know where the message came from that guided him. Many theories exist for the function of these discerning objects, but only Yahweh knows the exact truth. So the garment itself, the robe, the royal robes, had pomegranates and bells right away round the hem of his gelima, the robe, so that it could be heard still moving inside the Holy of Holies, or the set apart of the set apart. And the reason for the bells is because he could be heard going in. What they had a problem with is, if the bells stopped moving and they couldn't hear them, and he was still in there, Houston, we have a problem. So they used to tie a little piece of rope to his ankle. And if any of the high priests, the head kohen, went in there at any time and the bell stopped ringing for a period of time, they had to pull him out because they couldn't go in to get him. To my knowledge, it only happened once, and that was long after Aharon. Then an elaborately engraved gold seal that signified his personal set-apart status for Yahweh's service was placed in the middle of his turban over his forehead. Why? So that Yahweh would look and recognise his anointing and accept his gifts on behalf of Israel. So as members of his Melchizedek priesthood, we are to lavash, we're to put on, and to wear halbashah, handmade designer glima robes. We're to be fully dressed, ready and fit to serve in the royal household. You don't go into the temple unless you're fully dressed in those kind of clothes. And when you come out, you change your clothes. So there are 7 steps to lavash, to put on, the halbashah, the clothing. It's a series of crucial steps included in preparing for service. First, we need an ear to hear Yahweh, and then respond by acknowledging his call on our lives. Second is a complete step of trusting obedience as we accept that call. Thirdly, we remove the old clothing, the filthy rags. Fourth, we then need to be completely cleansed, washed, and ready to be in his presence. And fifth, we're then to be clothed in our priestly garments, our flesh and blood. Our priestly armour. Because our battle is in the spiritual realm. It's not against fellow human beings or flesh and blood. 6, we're to be anointed for service by Yahweh. And finally, 7th, we boldly step out, cleansed and clothed and anointed to take an active part in his plans and purposes. So let's recap the 7 steps. 1, we need to be available to hear and respond to the terms and scope of our authority and responsibility. 2, we need to fully accept the call unconditionally. No strings. 3, we need to remove our old ways and motivations. 4, we need to be 100% cleansed by water, blood and flame. 5, we need to be halbashah, clothed daily in kingdom garments. 6, we need to allow Adar to consecrate and anoint us for service that signifies his authority, his purity and our responsibilities. And 7, we need to be engaged in unconditional, no strings attached, 24/6 service. Why isn't it 24/7? Because 7's a Shabbat.
But didn't the Levites work on the Sabbath?
Well, yeah, that was their main day. But they were doing it in his service and they were focusing on him, so that was okay. Right. So we are to amitz halach, to boldly go. See, Star Wars pinches everything from us. Why? Because Yahweh tells us to. He says, if you're going to go, go boldly. Why? Because he will defeat all of his and our enemies, and we are not to be afraid of them. And when we think of the situation we face, and we think it's insurmountable, he tells us to let him open our eyes to see all of those who are with us, who far outweigh and outnumber those who aren't. We see ourselves surrounded by enemies, and he says, hang on a minute, let me open your eyes, and you'll see all of my guys surrounding them. Understand the situation. They're the ones on the defence, not us. Then, as we raise our hands to worship him and thank him, and as we sing his praises, then he delivers the enemy right into our hands. Make no mistakes, Talmud, we are not on the defence. we are on the offence. And we're using the weapons of our warfare that are not carnal, or our own strength, our flesh. Because we're not fighting against human beings, we're not fighting against the flesh, we don't use weapons of human beings, we don't use weapons of flesh. But the weapons he gives are effective and mighty for pulling down spiritual strongholds. Why? Because we're not struggling against human beings, but against rulers, authorities, and cosmic powers governing this darkness. So we too are told to grow powerful in union with him, and to be joyful as we move forward, because his joy is our strength. If you're not feeling very strong, if you're feeling a bit weak, ask him for joy. Ask him for more joy. So what's our main offensive weapon? Sword. Torah. Divides even to the marrow. Discernment. Then our Torah-based words, wielded by the 3 P's, prayer, praise and prophecy. A spiritual weapon to slay and take off the head of the giants in our lives. And as we run away from them, as we run towards them, grab him by the jaw and smack him around the head. As we run towards them and not away from them, and confront them with complete chutzpah, or audacity and confidence, encouraged by Abba as he leads us forward into complete victory. Remember, when the arms were raised, the battle went our way. When the arms were dropped, it went the other way. We're to constantly be joyful, constantly in relationship with him, constantly praising him. The musicians, the praise, the Kohen that were there to do that, went out first. Then the army. Today in the Olam Hazeh, or the world we live in here and now, a world that Judaism says will last for 6,000 years. Until the Acharit Hayamim, or the end of days, or the end of time, when Yom Yahaveh, the day of the Lord, or Shabbat. And again, I hear so many people talking about the day of the Lord. There is only one day of the Lord. It's at the beginning of Genesis, and it's called Shabbat. And he describes himself as the Lord of Shabbat. It's the Lord's day, it's his day. So when Yom Yahaveh, or the day of the Lord, or Shabbat, will mark Mashiach's return and usher in 1,000-year sabbatical millennium during the Olam Haba, or the world to come. This is Judaism saying this. This is not some theologian. They know what's going to happen. They know how it's going to happen. They just don't realise that it's for the second time and not the first. So, as you go to your wardrobe in the morning, make sure you're putting on the correct garments for the day. Items that are in perfect condition, suitable for the throne room and the battlefield. And like King David, you don't need heavy, clumsy, man-made armour. But you need to put on priestly garments and equip yourself with spiritual weapons. For although we do live in the world, we do not wage war in a worldly way. Because the weapons we use to wage war are not worldly. On the contrary, they have Yahweh's power for demolishing strongholds. And we demolish arguments and every arrogance that raises itself up against the knowledge of Yahweh. Which is exactly what David said to Goliath. And he said, "How dare you shout out and challenge the living God. And I'll just go to that and just show you what that armour consists of. And the funny thing is, the place that I got this from on the internet, as you hover the mouse over it, it changes to Chinese. So it's obviously a Chinese website that translates it into both. But you can see the kind of equipment that we're talking about. How accurate it is? It's pretty accurate from what I can see. Interesting thing is, Eddie, who's over in Rotorua, at the moment is researching each of the stones. He wants to get the exact right stone, and when he gets it, he's got this guy that's engraving them for him. So he obviously wants to finish up with a complete breastplate.
It's interesting that they make this rather beautiful blue, because in a lot of the other pictures of the same thing, the writer's chicken.
Yeah, no, the main part that was checkered was the part underneath the breastplate. There's that road there that was underneath the breastplate. That's the woven. And often it's a very different kind of checker. It's the four. If you look at the Temple Institute's one that they've constructed, it's those four colours and it's sort of woven into squares. But it's just to give you an idea of the kind of that armour, that spiritual armour. So, as I say, don't picture yourself like that in the morning anymore. Picture yourself like that. And just put on. Beards will be provided. Forget the head, just look at the rest of it. So Shalom, Malchuti Kohen, royal priests, Shalom.